Hello there. Good to see you.
Hello and welcome. I am, this is the Kevin Ross Emery Show, and I am here with
Ashley
Ashley
Olstein.
Oldstein,
Yeah, I'm
who's
on the
right
wrong side
there.
today. I'm moving. There we go. I feel
We're
better.
having some kind of technical thing. So, Ashley, I'm going to start by, as I am going to be slightly distracted with technology, tell me how. Because tonight's show, guys, is Spiritus Loci, and I am going to, and we are going to be um, talking about the spirit of place.
Which is super exciting because that's something that I absolutely love. And I just got back from a spiritual retreat in the Azores, Portugal. So it was unbelievable. Such a really, really special spot. This is my third time there, second visit as a spiritual workshop. And we stayed in a 15th century converted convent this time, which was quite energetic. It had a lot of energy, so it was eventful, really fun.
Well, I'm glad to hear it was really fun. I have taken care of the thing I needed to take care of, so we have corrected the technical issue. I apologize right at the beginning for my distraction, but any and all of you that have had tech issues or tech stuff going on, I'm sure you can appreciate I'm sure that you can appreciate my situation when you're dealing with live technology. And so I actually am going to start by reading a poem I wrote a long time ago called Spiritus Loci. And then
Perfect.
we're going to talk about the spirit of place and some of the things that we can do. We're also going to kind of catch up and see what else is going on.
I love it.
So, Spiritus Loci. There is spirit in this place. Some of the spirit here when I got here. Some I brought with me. Spirited this place. As I am, unlike me, however, for I move on. Moving on, spreading spirit, this place stays here, gathering spirit from all who pass. Giving and taking this place and and some of the spirit I now spread is this place. And some of this place's spirit is from what I have left behind. Taking and giving this place and I.
I really like that a lot.
Thanks.
You're
I know
welcome.
it's in one of my poetry books, and you can find all my poetry books on Amazon.com.
Mhm.
If you put in Kevin Ross Emery or Dr. Kevin Ross Emery, all my books will come up and you will find my poetry books. And that poem is in one of them. And bad me. I was going to look up so I could tell you which one it was in, and I can't tell you.
Well, you
Go
know
get
what?
buy them
It's
all.
It's Where's Waldo? It's like Spiritus Loci right there. It's just on a little manhunt trying to find said poem.
Interestingly, I wrote that poem when I was in Costa Rica. And I was in Costa Rica, and I had gone to Costa Rica to get cataract surgery done on both my eyes.
Wait a minute. I didn't know you had cataract surgery done in both your eyes.
I have had cataract surgery done on both my eyes.
Huh.
And, what happened was, so I went, I had, uh, you know, really bad eyesight. Like without my glasses, I was qualified for legally blind.
Hmm.
And then in my early 30s, early to mid 30s, I got LASIX in both my eyes.
Mhm.
And suddenly I had 20/20 vision. And it was great. And I didn't need glasses anymore. And it was really wonderful. And then in my early 40s, my vision got darker and harder to see. It started as nighttime vision issues and it was getting worse. And I finally went in and was like, what's going on with my eyes? And they said, you have cataracts in both your eyes.
Which is very strange at that age.
And it's strange at that age. And it's
Mhm.
strange because I have no history in my family on either side of cataracts.
You know, I was an ophthalmic technician for 10 years.
Yes. And now you say that, I remember.
Yeah.
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 And my eye doctor at the time said, I have seen a rise in younger people with cataracts.
Oh,
And the one single unifying thing is they all had LASIX.
interesting. Hmm.
And, you know, I have a tendency, I know this is a big, huge surprise, so be ready to gasp. I can be a very early adopter at times. And, you know, I know that the LASIX has come a long way, and I'm talking about I got LASIX in the 90s. So, um, hello, Elizabeth. Welcome. Thank you.
Hi,
So
Elizabeth.
I got I got LASIX, you know, in the 90s, and it was still actually kind of new then.
It was. That was when I was working.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was fairly new.
And you know, this doctor was just like, I don't recommend it to my clients yet because I don't think they've worked out all the bugs. He said, especially because I have seen this. And this was a guy that ran an eye clinic that was like the largest eye clinic in the city it was in and saw lots of patients.
Mm-hmm.
And when he says he personally was seeing a trend, I'm sure that trend might be much larger, but I don't know if it was ever put together because who knows?
Mm.
So I'm not trying to tell people if today you're considering LASIX, it's a bad idea. I mean, I would definitely do a deep dive Google on it. But so I went to this eye clinic and they told me, and I didn't have any insurance at the time, and it was going to cost me $10,000 to get both eyes done.
Yeah.
And I'm like, look, I have no insurance. I'm a cash pay. And they said, well, you can go get this credit card and, you know, Care Credit, and they'll pay, you know, and you can pay it in installments. And I said, but if I give you cash, can't I get some kind of cash discount? Nope. I
Mm.
said, you lose money to Care Credit. You're going to not get $10,000.
Right.
So why can I not give you less cash? Because I have, you know, at that point, I had $10,000 in my savings account. I'm like, I can hand you money, cash. I don't need to put it or create a new credit card. And at that point, I had already started developed what I have now, which is a resistance to carrying balances unless I absolutely have to.
Mm-hmm.
So all the work I'm doing on reconstructing my house is now hitting all my trigger buttons because
Yeah.
I'm going to have to carry some temporary debt that I will get paid through. But they were like, nope, nope. It goes against our contract. We cannot give a cash discount if we offer Care Credit. And I said, oh, so Care Credit decides what you can do.
Love
They hold you hostage.
it. Yeah.
And so I checked out medical tourism. And for less than $6,000, I went to a state-of-the-art clinic in Costa Rica with me and my partner at the time. We got airfare, stayed a week at an all-inclusive resort that was attached to it, went to the clinic for less than $6,000 and got the things done.
That's pretty cool. It's a sad commentary on some of the medical care here, but I'm glad you got a beautiful trip out of it.
Yeah. But anyways, and it was beautiful. Have you been to Costa Rica?
Yeah, I have. I took Samantha, my younger daughter. God, I don't know how old she was, seventh grade, and she just turned 21. So a handful of years ago.
Yeah. So yeah, and it's interesting because there are literally too many places, too many people that have too much say in medical care today.
Yeah.
Insurance companies, the government, you know, state governments. And I mean, it's one of the sad things that, like right now, um, you know, that we pay more for so much than any other developed country in the world. I mean, that's how medical tourism got started, is because you can
Right.
get stuff cheaper everywhere else because we have all of these other people pulling strings, controlling things, and people making money off of us getting overcharged for something that we can take a 2 hour, 3 hour airline flight and get for a third of the cost. And this place was spotless, clean, state of the art, everything.
Hmm.
I haven't followed it because I won't go back for cataracts. I don't think your was an optician treat. You don't ever get cataracts. I mean, you don't ever get
No,
a cataract
what they
surgery.
do is the cataract is in your lens, and they remove the lens and put an artificial lens in. So you could get clouding of the capsule that holds the lens in there, and they just can treat that with laser. So that's usually like if you're going to have a problem post cataract surgery, that's what you would get. But you
Yep.
can't grow them back once it's removed. It's like an appendix. You're not growing it back. Once it's gone, it's gone.
Yeah, I've
Um,
had it for about 20 years, and I think I
and I
might.
never knew that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, 20 years. So
Well, yeah, I haven't known you 20 years, but I can usually tell when I look at someone's eyes, I can see the lens implant. So, because I know what to look for. And I've never noticed it with you, but you usually have glasses on with me.
yeah. Well, and the funny thing is, if you look at my glasses, one lens is completely clear and has no correction, and the other one has like a 10 correction or something because
Yeah,
I got one for distance and one for reading.
gotcha. Oh, all right. Well, so it brought you to Costa Rica and allowed you to write a beautiful poem. And yep.
As I was tracking through this river in this rainforest,
It's exactly what you want to do before and after surgery.
um, yeah, I think I did all that before surgery. I think I got there 2 or 3 days early, and I did all my stuff, and then I
Good.
rested for a couple of days at the resort.
Yeah.
And yeah, but yep, that's where I wrote the poem. So, um, talk to me about. So, I'm in the middle of a rant, so I'm going to finish my rant if you don't mind.
Bring it. Let me get my
So,
popcorn.
we were talking briefly because between my trip to Chicago
Yep.
and the things that I do even in Chicago to stay to my commitment of Spiritus Loci, because to me, I mean, it's a poem and it's a concept and it's actually a class I created and teach, but it's something that that I commit to do as well, is practice I think that there is active Spiritus Loci and there is passive Spiritus Loci.
Mm-hmm.
And the majority of people do passive Spiritus Loci and therefore get very little out of it, if anything, that they even register. Like whatever they get gets kind of lost if they get anything at all. But so, but this is the first time we've connected since before Portugal and before Chicago. So I'm just going to continue a tiny bit of my rant, which goes back to the disaster we have created in the Western medical system, which I had multiple encounters with last week.
Oh. Mm.
Yes. So I arrived around 6 o'clock at night, more or less, at the emergency room, and with my husband, who was in medical crisis,
Mm,
and they finally got him into ICU after 2 in the morning,
mm.
where he spent the next day and a half, and he's home now, and now he's fine. But during that, I mean, my husband is a type 1 diabetic.
Yeah.
And I expect if you go to an emergency room, you go to a hospital, that they really understand the difference between a type 1 and a type 2 diabetic.
I would hope so. That's part of triage. It's a very, very different animal.
It's a very different animal. And
Yeah.
yet there were choices that they were making
Mm.
that would have been okay for a type 2 diabetic that was really bad for a type 1 diabetic.
Wow. I'm really sorry to hear that.
And he was advocating for himself the best he could, but his blood sugars were so high, they were off the chart, and they were dicking him around and not giving him insulin. And I kept on trying to explain the concept that he gets little regular doses of insulin every hour with his pump,
Yeah, yeah.
medium, and then he gets a dose when he eats. And he had had 2 back-to-back failed diabetic pumps. And he didn't realize the first one failed until his
Oh,
blood sugar
no.
started to go up. In the middle of the workday, he changed it to a second one. That one also failed.
Wow.
And so by the time he got home, and by the time I mean, and I like still had clients that I was supposed to be doing that night. I mean, like, I mean, the rest, the my next 36 hours were just like taking care of him, being at the hospital, advocating, doing all the things we do,
Yeah.
that we have to
Mm.
do. And but I mean, we get there at 6 o'clock at night, and the triage nurse understands it's up over 400. It's so high they don't know what to do with it. His own provider said, "Don't take any insulin, don't do anything, go to the hospital because you're probably in
Yeah.
acidosis." And there are certain ways you want to treat that, and you just don't want to start like doing self-administrated, like
Right.
you
Masking all of the
yep.
symptoms. Yeah. Yeah.
At 1 in the morning, I am standing at the nurse's station in my most authoritative, clearly frustrated voice, saying, "You will get in there with some insulin." 5 hours. They could not get their act together to give him insulin.
Wow.
And he's getting higher, and
Yeah.
he's getting more loopy. And at some point, he was losing the ability to advocate for himself. So
Yeah.
thank God I was there, because I wasn't going anywhere. But, and then I get this half-baked apology that the doctor that left when he arrived didn't properly communicate what was going on to the doctor that was there, that they were waiting for blood work because they were trying to, I'm pretty sure, CYA with the insurance company that what they did was going to get covered because they followed all the steps.
Ah.
He's going deeper into crisis, and the lab botches the first blood work, and they don't find out. They call down, and I go, why do we not know? Why? Well, let me call down. Oh, the blood work was bad. And they had to come up and get new blood work and then have to go through the process. And I was like, okay, stop. You understand that this can cause long-term side effects to leave him at this high blood sugar, and you're doing nothing about it.
Yeah. Jeez.
So, I mean, and it's technically, I mean, it's not a bad hospital. I've had a lot of dealings with the hospital, and I'm not going to mention any names,
Yeah.
but yeah. So, it was so funny. I didn't really get into my vent mode, which I apologize for.
No
But
need. No need.
Until I thought about what I went through with my eyes when I was telling you the story of Spiritus
Yeah.
Loci. And I'm like, here we are 20 years later, and and we're reading stories of women dying and bleeding out because they can't get the care because they're afraid of being arrested. But it happens even it's not just about abortions or productive health care, reproductive health care. It's in so many ways the insurance company has got so many strings in that are handcuffing the medical people to be afraid to do what they need to do at the cost of the health of the client, and no one is being held accountable for it that I know. The insurance companies are not being held accountable how much somebody gets worse when a claim. I mean, like, I've had them deny me getting tests that I clearly needed, and we had to redo it, and we had to jump through 2 more steps. And I'm sure, I know you have your own lovely relationship with the Western medicine medical system,
Mm-hmm.
but how many times, if they had been allowed to do what they needed to do first time around, would it have made, first of all, less suffering on the person involved?
But it
And
would cost the insurance company less. Going through these
yeah,
spinning into Nowhereville
you know,
costs more.
this is the pendulum of, there was a time when the medical association was getting fat and happy by recommending tests that weren't done, surgeries that weren't needed. I mean, they needed to be corralled in, but now we've gone to the other side where we literally have a Gestapo system that can end up permanently damaging or even having somebody die because there's so many hoops to jump through.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and we need to stand up and be responsible, because even if we never end up in that situation, you're damn lucky if you get through all of your life without somebody knowing and caring about having some negative reaction because somebody didn't dot an I or tap dance or smile the right way or put their clown makeup on to get the approval the first time. So there's my rant.
All right. Mic
I'll
drop.
leave that. Oh,
Exactly. Well, I'm glad he's feeling better. I'm really sorry that you had that experience, but that's so scary and frustrating and infuriating and all of the things. But bottom line is he's home and better,
yep, he's home and better.
which is good.
But and I think this comes from my I don't know if it's just the nature of my edgy personality.
You?
Say it's not so. Or whether it is the my being a a long-standing ancestral Unitarian Universalist, which is all about social justice.
Yeah.
That even if we don't have that problem again in the future, knowing that other people will who are less able to advocate for themselves makes me feel like I need to do something about it. Because just because it might not happen to me again doesn't make it okay.
Yeah.
And I think people lose sight of the fact that if you stand up and push back and do what you need to do for actual change to happen, you are making it better for the people behind you. And you somewhere are benefiting from the people who chose to do it that went before you in some other area.
Definitely.
But apathy is killing this country. So tell me about Portugal. Tell me more about Portugal. Tell me about the wonderful energy. How would you describe the Spiritus Loci of where you were?
So, as I mentioned, it was a 15th century monastery that was converted probably about 30 years ago. Apparently it burned at some point and there was nothing left. It was just the floor of the structure. And the current owner, it was her father-in-law and his partner, had a vision for it. And there was no tourism in this area at that time. So it was pretty much a labor of love, an investment of love, that they really just wanted to restore this building. They were antique dealers as well. So they painstakingly restored the building. And so now it's being used as an Airbnb or a retreat center, whatever, the need calls for. So I was there with 11 other people, so 12 of us, and then the instructor. And so we rented out the whole place and we all stayed there. It was a beautiful building. I had posted some of my pictures online, so I don't know if anybody has seen them. It was stunning, all lava. You did lava details in the walls, and they really did a beautiful, beautiful, restrained job of restoring it. It wasn't overdone. It just felt very peaceful, calm. The energy in there was, we all described it as dense. There was just so much going on. And there were certain rooms that you would walk through, and I'm very sensitive to energy. And there was this one spot in the hallway where I was walking through. The first 5 minutes I was there and I had to stop in my tracks. I'm like, oh, right here. Like I felt this pocket of energy. I'm like, oh, okay, I need to spend a little time back here. We ended up doing seances in that same hallway, they were quite amazing. I won't bore anybody with the details, but they were very, really beautiful and powerful. And again, like just even doing that, the energy was just so thick in that spot. The land itself, it was looking at the water, and I did some walking around. Locally, it was in a town called Villa de Campo, a little village, probably about 20 minutes outside of Ponta Delgada, which is I'm on the island of San Miguel. Ponta Delgada is the city that's there, the bigger city. So it was this adorable village, looking at the water. And, we went down to, there's a caldera just off of the shore, the island, which used to be owned by the convent. So we took a boat over to the island and walked around over there. It's a beautiful beach that people can go and swim, and inside the volcanic remnants. We didn't swim. We didn't know that we were actually even getting off the boat. So it was a surprise. But yeah, so the land, it just feels beautiful there. There's something really connected about the Azores that I found. As I said, this was my third trip there, first time in Villa de Campo to stay. I've driven through. But as a volcanic island, I feel like it's very connected to the earth. I don't know, it's just easier to feel the vibration of the earth. So that was like the highlights of my trip to Portugal, just the little headers.
So, and it's very interesting. Some of what you're talking about, I want to build on, if I may.
Yeah.
There is the land energy, and then there is the energy of the people that they left behind in the land energy.
Yep.
Which to me always feels different than the energy that people left behind, like in a structure.
Well, this one it felt a little, so I think people lived in this convent and probably lived there a long time, their life, and stayed there, died there, or buried somewhere on the property. But it was also a missionary convent, so people were coming and going. So I think there was a little bit more of a temporary, transient feeling to the structure itself. It didn't hold on to that like deeper lifetime energy, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, when I teach my ghost class, and I'm talking about what is a ghost and what is not a ghost. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I talk about is that sometimes sensitive people will think that a place is haunted or there's a ghost, and all it is a lifetime of intense emotional energy that you're picking up, that everything is organic. I mean, I'm staring because I'm still in my basement because my office is not done and my kitchen is not done, but it's close. It's close.
Oh, so close. This close.
So close. But that even though I'm looking right now at the foundational stone wall of my house, which was built in 1900, not a new structure by any chance, but what looks solid is still absorbent. And energy, the particles of energy and emotion and stuff like that permeate stone and brick and all of this stuff. But it has to really be either really, really intense or really, really layered and layered and layered and layered. And so you can walk into a place and go, ooh, ooh, and you can walk into a place and go, oh, I just want to sit down and curl up in a chair. Like,
Yep.
give me a cup of tea and give me my favorite book.
And there was a little bit of both at this place. I mean, there was rooms that you wanted to stay in, and there was rooms that I wanted to look at because it was pretty, but I didn't want to sit down and curl up. I was like, I'm going back in the other room.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so this is going to seem like a strange connection, but we're coming into the season of Halloween, so maybe it's not. I'm going to follow the traveling minstrel known as my brain.
Look over there. Monkey brain. Yeah.
Did you ever see The Shining?
I did when I was young. It scared the ever-living shit out of me. Thank you, my older brother. Made me watch it.
I went and saw that in the movie theaters, the
Nope.
original one. And it was when it was first out. And I was traumatized for a couple of days afterwards. And part of it was that the thing that a lot of people who don't understand energy and how it works is that a lot of what was being seen there was a combination of trapped souls and spirits, but also, the malignant energy that was literally in the walls of that hotel that called other malignant energy to it and could feed on people that may be more susceptible, especially people that are very energetically sensitive, but very close to the idea and don't want to explore it and don't want to understand it and don't want to protect it and stuff like this, that literally the house made Jack Nicholson crazy.
Right.
And it freaked me out so much because I knew that the me at that point could have been Jack Nicholson if I had been in that house. And I had already done my first ghost clearing. And the first ghost clearing I ever did was an extremely malignant set of energies and very unpleasant stories. I tell it in my ghost class when I do it.
I don't want to hear it.
Yeah, I'm not telling
No offense. No offense.
But it's still a kind of spiritus loci. It was the spirit of that place.
Right.
And I find it interesting that the monastery burned down, which is an act of purification for a lot of the energy that was in the walls. But you said they rebuilt the new one on the old foundation?
So I was trying to follow the history of all of it. There was the building that we were in, there was part of the convent, and then another part of it was up at monastery convent. They called it both. I think the Portuguese word is convento, so I don't know if that means monastery convent. In my mind, convent is for nuns, monastery is for monks, but we're talking monks here. There were no nuns. But part of it was, part of it was up on a hill, a little distance away, and that's where the water source would come down. And so there, I think the chapel is up there now. I think that was more of the convent or the monastery. And then it switched, and then the chapel is up there now. And then they built this monastery back in the 1500s on the space. And so the original, they called it the kitchen, which was a living area that also was a chapel. You can see like outlines. There's a cistern on the wall, and you can see the outlines of a cross. But they called it the kitchen. So at some point, that was the kitchen of the whole monastery, and it was entirely built out of stone because nothing would burn. Ergo, like, if they were open fire in the kitchen, they didn't want something to burn. So I think that existed, but the rest of the structure, which is the architecture, was fascinating. Just to skip around a little bit, it's shaped like a cross. So if you looked at it from the sky, it's shaped like a cross, and there's like the long part and then the arm that goes across. And so that part all burned down to the main floor.
So, yeah. Well, I was wondering because, there have been times when I've had to work with bad energy to go out of a place because, I'm sure I know you've done energy clearings as well, where you've been called in. I've been called in to clear really negative energy out of a place. I've been occasionally been known to be snuck in a back door.
By the way, to be clear, I didn't feel any negative energy in this space. It felt really
Yep.
just calm.
Well, you said you went into like a room and you're like, there's the energy, and that's where you did the seance.
Yeah.
It wasn't clear to me whether it was ooh energy or ooh energy.
It wasn't. It was in between both of those. It wasn't like, ick, I got to move through this. It was like, this feels different right here. Didn't necessarily feel like, oh, I want to just sit, like, let me pull a chair up and hang out over here. But I'll also say there was a house cat that the caretaker had that lived separately but had access to come in and out of where we were staying. And he hung out in that spot a lot. Cat liked that spot.
Yep.
So,
well, and there have been spots that I have been drawn to, and I find out that historically these were places where this might be a chapel that was in a private chapel in an estate or something. And there were lots of prayer and lots of devotion. And, even if maybe the overall religion at the time might be icky and running around and converting by the sword and, torturing people and, burning women for being powerful. The people that were very devout in it did very devout, repeated, and so that would be a very calm, prayerful energy that would get layered and layered and layered. But sometimes when I've gone to clear a space, clear energy out of a space, like in Spiritus Loci, the spirit of place. But going there is it isn't the place; it's where the place was built upon.
Yeah.
I had to clear a house once where the trapped soul was attached to the house that burned down, and they built a new house on it. So nothing existed from the house that she died in, but they built the house on this on like it was they just like redid and built a new house on it. And so she just attached to the new house because it was the space. And and that was one of the cases where when I did it, I actually went and researched the history because the owners didn't know there'd been a house on the house before there because it had happened like 150 years earlier, and it just was lost out of the lore because the house itself had so much history. And yet when I was finding out why this girl was trapped there, and I said something about, well, she died at the time of the War of 1812. And they were like, well, that house wasn't built for another 20, like it was built like after the War of 1812. And I was like, okay, but I was like, I can see her. I can see her in flames. I can see, stuff like this. And so I went to the local library and researched it and found that there had been a house there that had burned down at the time of the War of 1812. And they just rebuilt a new house on it. Yeah. So she stayed attached to that land.
Yeah. Well, I did another trip last summer when I went to Maryland, and I was staying, it was again another workshop, and we were staying on an old plantation right on the Chesapeake Bay, and it was a lot of energy in that house too. And it was like, I got to go home. It was a little ick. There was a lot of energy in that place that didn't make me feel good. So I can tell the difference. Like that one, when I remember back, I'm like, oh, one and done on that one. I won't be returning to that location. And there were just certain pockets in the house that one of which was the hallway I had to walk through to get to the bedroom I was staying in. It didn't feel good.
But of course. Of course.
But yeah, and that was the old part of the house. I don't know the history. I mean, the house had been there for a long time, and seen a lot of stuff. There was Native American energy. There was, slave trade energy, and, Freedom Trail. And it was like Harriet Tubman was staying at the plantation next door. There was a lot of history in this spot. And, I could feel it all, and it just felt unsettled. It didn't feel comfortable. Yeah.
So, yeah, several years ago, I got this, I laughingly call it a bizarre message. And it was the second time I had gotten a message that I needed to go on the road. I talk often about the first time I went, and I went for 2.5 years and blah, blah, blah. But after that, and after I settled back in and practice again and did everything from being on the road, I got a message to go on the road. But this message was very specific. And I spent 9-10 months with my partner at the time going to old growth forests across the country.
Beautiful.
And doing energetic work on the trees, the old trees. And again, the spirit of energy, and going and hearing the messages from the tree. I always remember one tree that had this big, like, hole in it that was over a lake. So it went over the lake, and it was actually big enough that it was like a womb, and I could crawl into it and be almost surrounded by the tree.
Beautiful.
Take down and see everything the tree had seen in its history, and what was its messages, and what was the, and kind of like activating recharging, activating these energies of the trees that, are constantly being drained by our ferocious destruction. And on that same trip, I was led to go to a few places and do healing on, like, the Trail of Tears and other places where great horrible things had been done, and in the land, like in a place in the land that wasn't a building, wasn't a city necessarily, wasn't a place that you wouldn't think would need to be cleared, but it would be like, I was just drawn right to it, and I would go in and be like, I can see it, I can see them, pushing the Native Americans in the chain. I can see that they're dying, that when they couldn't walk, they just leave them to die and keep going. It was horrible. And they were still there and opening up and helping them to pass through. And then that was the other, and it was on that trip that I also did the work where I went to 2 or 3 places and opened up new fairy gates and revitalized the energy and invited it back in places that still had the ability to hold it. But I was going to places like Alaska and Hawaii and, deep into some of the mountain chains where, only people that really were hikers. None of them were touristy places.
No, I don't think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
When you think of the places that come to you, when you think of the land or the place that gave you the energy that you feel was transformational, just the energy itself, where do you think of you've been?
So that's kind of an easy. I've been to a lot of places that fill my soul, that make me feel really good. Scotland was one of them. There was some parts of Scotland that I just felt like, wow, this is home. Like I felt like I was connecting with all of my past lives and generations and all of that. But the place that makes me feel the most at peace is actually down at the Cape in Truro. So on the bay side of Truro, whenever I meditate, I find myself going there and sitting on the beach. Like that's where I put my higher self. I sit on the beach and watch the waves, and it's the place where I feel the most at peace and the most connected to earth, divine, nature, all of the things.
Now, have you ever explored whether you've had any past lives there?
Oh, that's such an interesting question. I have not explored that, but that would be a fun thing to do.
Yeah, because the first thing that kind of crept spidey my spidey sense kind
Spidey
of
sense.
my spidey sense was this. I didn't bring it into focus because obviously we're on the radio show and blah blah blah, but was this lifetime that you had there, and it feels like three lifetimes
Huh.
that you had in that area, and so yeah. It was just a flash, but it's when you were talking about it, it was like I saw what I realized was three different versions of faces your soul wore
Mm-hmm.
there with you when you were meditating.
Well, it's the place that, and it's so close to home. I can be there in 2.5 hours, and I go rarely, which makes me sad. But yeah, it's a special place for my heart. That's for sure.
Well, one of these days when things slow down a little bit,
Yeah, yeah.
you and I should have a hooky day. You should
All
take me
right,
and share your space.
let's do it. Let's do it. What's your special place? Like, what makes you feel like in the flow?
I always feel most sacred when I am in any kind of salted body of water.
Mm. We have those in Truro.
Yeah. I can go in, and I've been in the Mediterranean, and I've been in the Atlantic, and I've been in the Gulf, and I've been in the Pacific, and I've been in, I think, the Baltic. I mean, wherever I go, if I find a place that I can just be, even if there are people somewhere, but they're not like, if it's not like on top of you, I can walk into that water and I can just stand there in the water and I immediately, and I really think it's probably connected to my Atlantis lifetime.
I can see that. That fits.
Yeah.
That's on brand for you.
Yep. I go in that water and it just washes everything away and I can suck in the energy. And one of my lifetime magical moments was I was in Hawaii. I think it was only for a couple of weeks that time, because I've like spent a month in Hawaii and and so longer, shorter trips. And I'm going to say I also felt some of that energy. I feel that some of that energy in St. Lucia in the Caribbean, especially. St. Lucia had some very, very powerful sacred energy for me, and so did Puerto Rico. But in Hawaii, friends that I had that lived there had a boat captain that was a friend who, on a day off from actually people hiring him to go out and look for dolphins,
Mm,
out because it was a good friend of our friends, and we went and had a little personal, like 6-person party. Not party, but I mean, like we weren't drinking a lot. We were actually going out. And he took us to this little like hidden bay place that he just kind of went to. And he goes, and we got there and we started swimming, and there was 3 pods of dolphins that was hanging out in that bay.
magical.
I was swimming and I had dolphins underneath me and I had dolphins above me. And I realized I was swimming like the dolphins, going up and down. And at one point, and they'd come up and they'd laugh and then talk to each other like dolphins do. And they were playing with each other and they were playing with me, like they would jump
Yeah,
over me.
I
And
love it.
I was just like all over the place, the dolphin and the water energy, and I was just like whoosh, magical moments.
Yeah, that's one of those ones that you will never forget the way that feels. I mean, that's just beautiful.
Yep, yep. So yeah, though there are lots of places I've loved, but there's, I was keep looking at our practical spiritual advice tagline, and I'm going to take a second and give some advice and be practical for a moment.
Bring it.
you know so often we miss the opportunity to have a transformational or even an evolving experience because we're not fully present in it, because we bring all of our with us. We may not have our technology in our head, in our hands, because we've now have got it in our head, and we don't disconnect, especially today. And but this whole concept of Spiritus Loci is you go to a place and you just allow yourself to listen to the call of the place, and you follow that call. Like that magical moment in Costa Rica, I've been fairly lucky from the perspective of the different partners that have come in and out of my life. Of course, I'm on my last one now, but before I was popular, and I and he trusted me, and I just kept on going. We're not quite there yet, and I was enjoying everything, but I could almost you get quiet and you can almost feel the pull. Do you know what I'm talking about? Like you're not.
I, I definitely know. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not quite there. But then you're really quiet and you've turned everything off. If possible, left it behind, whatever. And I saw this river, and I had no idea what was in the river, no idea if it was safe to cross it. No, I mean, like and I was just like, there, I need to be in this river. Like the river is calling to me. I can hear the river calling.
Yeah.
Just like I could feel that tree with the womb calling me, wanting me to come in. It invited me. It wanted to talk to me. And I went into the river, and I was in the river, and I was just in the river, and I was in the sunlight. And I just completely allowed myself to become one with everything around me. I could feel the energy. I could feel the water. I could feel the sunlight. I could feel the green. I could feel the sound of the birds. I could feel everything. And I allowed myself to be very present and very consciously gift my thanks and gratitude and love into the river and into the land and into the place. And then I allowed myself to open up and take it all back into me and
Yep.
feel this incredible spiritual ecstasy rush of life, being alive. So I see so many people walk through life and yet aren't alive.
Yeah. Zombies. Yeah. Sleepwalking.
And I was so alive in that moment. And, you know, And it's funny because another moment popped in my head, which is I was horseback riding on a beach in Puerto Rico, and I stopped and I was in the horse on the horse, and I looked, and somehow I knew that I was at a place where if I walked into the water and swam, that I would end up in Africa, or like there was just like nothing there. But and I was with Papa at the time, because my father and I took a fair amount of vacations together in my late 20s and early 30s. We loved to travel together. And I actually have a picture of me on that horse. He took a picture and I was just stopped and I just looked out there and I could feel the water. I could feel the call. I could feel the sand. I could feel the horse and I could bring it in. But stop, feel it, be fully in it.
And I think that's something that we miss, like the opportunity all the time. Just too busy, too busy, too busy, too busy, doing my thing, looking at my phone. Yeah, driving the car and not really just being.
Stopping, being grateful, sharing your love. And when you can share your love with the land, you
Mm,
share your love with that place on the beach and the sands that you're in, when you can do it and you share it out, you'll get 10 times more back, if not 1,000 times more back.
definitely. But here's the thing too, and this is my little spirit team is chiming in here. Don't always have to be there. You can do it in your heart. You can get quiet and imagine going to a space and having that experience. Like you don't, somebody can't get on vacation to go to Costa Rica or down to the Cape. You can do it in your living room, just allowing yourself to get quiet, get still, connect with your heart, imagine that space around you, and then feel that love for the land, the sand, the sea, the river, the trees, like all of that thing. I mean, you can expand that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the bonus things for me is, if when you do get a chance to say go to the water, if you're a water person,
Yeah.
if you do this practice, then when you're not on the water and you open up to connect, you literally have the connection within you. It's like the water is now part of you.
Yeah. Little transference. You get a
Yeah.
little, you leave a little, take a little, and it's still, you carry it with you.
And that's why that I make such an effort when I travel. Even when I was in Chicago, and I've been to Chicago several times, I always find time to go to the parks, find a
Yep.
place to bring in some of that energy, walk along Lake Michigan, get to that place. And I always just make sure I take the time to sit for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever, bring it in. And like you said, you can do it, but it's like on steroids if you
In
made
person.
that deep connection and you left a part of yourself, because you can go back to that part of you that you consciously chose to leave,
Yeah.
which then changes what the next person comes and finds. It's a little bit different.
It's a little different.
Yeah.
Hopefully a little better than the way you found it, which is how we should all be approaching everywhere we go. Make it a
Well,
little better.
if you are sharing love and gratitude and appreciation, the place will always be better.
Here, here. By the way, we have 1 minute left. We're done. How did that
So,
go so fast? I had so many other places I wanted to talk about.
well, we can do this again. I mean, I
Let.
think, I think we have a lot of we have a conversation we need to schedule to come up and talk about some of the where we're going.
Yes.
Um, but I do want to take a second and say 10/20/24, 6 p.m. Eastern Time, with Patty Anastasia, Louis Grassi, Raina Wilson, and myself. We are doing a chakra sip. SIP is Spiritual Interactive Panel. You go to Facebook, to the New Hampshire Metaphysical Facebook page, and that's where we do a stream like we do here. It's free. You come and you hear these different spiritual practitioners and myself discuss chakras from a number of different perspectives, and then you get to ask questions and be part of the process. So that again is on 10/20. And next week I will be on here with Matt Connerton. I don't know whether you're going to join us or not, Ashley. It's certainly interesting times.
It is interesting times, and it's also Rosh Hashanah, so I'm not sure. I've got to check out the lay of the land, and maybe I'll be able to pop in, but I might see you the week after. I may have to miss next week, so we'll chat.
I know top of the month is your time to because Matt's been doing that show with me at the top of the month for 10 years, so or more. So yep, you're always welcome. But
thank you.
Okay.
All right. See you soon. Thank you very much. All right. Mwah. Bye, everybody.
Bye.